I remember when he carved this for me. So much has changed
Opening
since
hook.
then.
120. 150 words. Rain hammered down like bullets on that freight platform in Dusty Ford. And through it all, Jesse Hart heard the auctioneer's voice cut through the storm. Sold to the highest bidder. But what stopped Jesse cold wasn't the rain or the thunder. It was the small wooden horse that fell from the woman's trembling hands. A toy he'd carved 20 years ago for a girl named Lila. Before we dive into this story of redemption, rescue, and a past that refused to stay buried, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button and stick with me until the end. And drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Now, let me take you back to that cold November night in 1874, where everything started with an auction that should never have happened. The rain came down hard enough to sting. Jesse Hart kept his hat pulled low as he guided his horse through the muddy streets of Dusty Ford, wanting nothing more than to grab supplies and get back to his line shack before dark. He'd ridden 6 miles in weather that would drown a duck, and his patience was already worn thin. Then he heard the crowd. Not the usual Friday evening bustle, this was different. Voices sharp with excitement, the kind that drew blood sport spectators. Jesse's jaw tightened. He knew that sound. Knew it from the war, from cattle auctions, from anywhere men gathered to watch something suffer. He should have kept riding. "What's the starting bid?" A voice boomed over the crowd. "Come on, gentlemen, don't be shy. Strong back, decent teeth, and she ain't gave me a lick of trouble since I took custody." Jesse's hands stopped moving on the reins. He turned his horse toward the railway siding, where a crowd of maybe 40 men, ranchers, drifters, railroad workers, formed a tight circle around a freight crate. Oil lamps cast yellow light through the rain, and at the center of it all stood Silas Crow. Crow was a fixer. The kind of man who always had papers when you needed them, always had cash when the bank said no, and always owned a piece of you by the time the ink dried. He wore a city suit that didn't belong in the mud, and held a ledger above his head like it was holy scripture. And beside him, head covered by a burlap shawl, stood a woman. Jesse's stomach turned to ice. "Now I know what you're thinking." Crow continued, his voice slick as oil on water. "But this is all legal, boys. I got the papers right here. Guardianship transferred proper like when her employer defaulted on transport and lodging debts. The law says, you're full of shit, Crow." The voice came from somewhere in the crowd, but it didn't have much force behind it. Crow smiled. "The law says exactly what's written in these documents, witnessed by Sheriff Porter himself." Jesse's eyes found the sheriff leaning against a support post, arms crossed, face carefully neutral. Porter was a practical man. He kept the peace by knowing when to look the other way. "Do I hear $20? Crow called out. "20 for 6 months guaranteed labor. Come on, she can cook, clean, mend." 25. A ranch foreman, Jesse recognized, stepped forward. "But I want to see her face first." The crowd murmured approval. Crow reached for the shawl. The woman flinched backward, and something small fell from her hands, bouncing off the crate and into the mud. Jesse didn't think. He dismounted and pushed through the crowd, his boots splashing cold water up his legs. Men stepped aside, some because they recognized him, others because something in his face said they should. He reached the crate and bent down. In the mud, half buried in rainwater, lay a small wooden horse. Rough carved child's work with a chipped tail and initials barely visible on the belly, J.H. Jesse's World, tilted. He'd made 2 of these. Carved them from scraps of pine when he was 12 years old, working 3 days on each one until his fingers bled. He'd given one to a girl with dark eyes and a laugh that sounded like creek water over stones. A girl who moved away when her mother died, and he never saw her again. Lila Dawson. His hand closed around the wooden horse. "Sir, that belongs to..." Crow started. "She's not stock." Jesse's voice came out flat and cold. He rose to his full height, water running down his face. She's a person. Crow's smile didn't waver. A person with debts, Mr. Hart. Debts that need paying. Now if you're here to bid, step up. If not, move along. Jesse looked at the woman. She hadn't raised her head, hadn't moved, but he could see her hands shaking. Raw rope marks circled both wrists. How much? Jesse asked. Pardon. How much to clear the debt? Crow's eyes gleamed. Well, now that depends on... How much? Jesse repeated. Total. Every penny she supposedly owes. The crowd went quiet. Even the rain seemed to ease up waiting. Crow made a show of consulting his ledger. With accumulated interest, boarding costs, and the matter of the stolen ticket, I'd say $75 settles it. Cash. Someone in the crowd whistled. That was 3 months' wages for a ranch hand. Jesse reached into his coat and pulled out a leather roll. His winter money. Everything he'd saved from breaking horses and doing repairs around the county. He'd been planning to use it to buy seed for spring planting, maybe finally fix the roof on his shack. He counted out the bills into Crow's hand. 40, 50, 60, 75. Crow counted it again slowly, then folded the money into his vest. Well, Mr. Hart, looks like you just bought yourself 6 months of indentured service. I'll need you to sign. No. Jesse grabbed the ledger from Crow's hands and ripped out the page with the woman's information on it. The crowd gasped. I'm buying her freedom. No papers, no service, no debt. Now you listen here. Crow's hand went to his belt. Jesse stepped closer. You got your money. We're done. For a long moment, nobody moved. Rain pattered on the wooden platform. Somewhere, a train whistle blew lonely and distant. Sheriff Porter finally pushed off from his post. Crow, the man, paid. Transactions complete. But the papers are in his hands now. Porter's voice carried the weight of finality. Let it go. Crow's face went red, but he stepped back. Fine. But you mark my words, Hart, you just made a powerful enemy tonight. Jesse didn't answer. He turned to the woman and held out the wooden horse. Ma'am? Her hands emerged from under the shawl, small scarred fingers trembling, and took it. For just a second, her face tilted up, and Jesse caught a glimpse of dark eyes that hit him like a punch to the chest. But then she lowered her head again. Can you ride? Jesse asked softly. A tiny nod. Come on, then. He walked her to his horse, the crowd parting like the Red Sea. Nobody met his eyes. Shame did that made good men study their boots. Jesse helped her up into the saddle, then grabbed the reins and started walking. Leading her out of the lamplight, away from Crow's glare and Porter's measured neutrality, into the dark where the rain washed everything clean. They were 50 yards out when someone called after them. Hart. You know she's wanted, don't you? There's paper on her for stagecoach theft. Jesse kept walking. You're harboring a criminal. Jesse kept walking. The voices faded behind them, swallowed by rain and distance, and the kind of silence that settles over a man when he's made a choice he can't take back. They walked for 2 miles like that. Jesse's boots filled with water. His coat grew heavy. The woman didn't speak, didn't move except to sway with the horse's rhythm. Finally, Jesse's line shack appeared through the darkness, a lean, sorry-looking structure with a tin roof and walls that had seen better decades. But it was dry, and it was his. He helped her down, noticing how light she was, how she moved like someone who'd learned to take up no space at all. Wait here, he said, and went inside to light a lamp. The shack was one room, a bed, a stove, a table with 2 chairs, shelves holding supplies and a few books. Clean but spare, honest poverty. Jesse lit the stove and got water heating in a kettle. When he came back out, the woman was standing exactly where he'd left her, soaked through, shaking in the cold. Come inside, he said gently. Please. She followed him in moving slow, careful. Jesse pulled out a chair, and she sat still, clutching the wooden horse. He found a towel and draped it over her shoulders. Found a clean shirt that would hang like a tent on her. Set them on the table. Privy's out back. There's a blanket you can hold for privacy while you change. I'll step outside. Don't. Her voice was hoarse, barely more than a whisper. Don't go back out in that rain. Just turn around. Jesse turned to face the wall. He heard the rustle of wet fabric, the small sounds of someone trying to preserve dignity in an impossible situation. Okay, she said finally. He turned back. She'd changed into his shirt and wrapped the blanket around herself like armor. Her hair was dark plastered to her skull, and she still wouldn't raise her eyes. Jesse poured hot water into a basin and set it on the table with a clean rag. For your hands. She stared at the basin like it might bite her. The rope marks, Jesse explained. Need to clean them before infection sets in. Slowly she unwrapped her wrists and dipped them in the warm water. She hissed at the sting, but didn't pull away. Jesse moved to the stove and started pulling out supplies. Beans, salt pork, an onion, coffee. What's your name? He asked, keeping his voice light, unthreatening. Silence. You don't have to tell me, but I need to call you something. More silence. Then, Ellie. Jesse's hands paused on the coffee tin. Something about the way she said it, not quite a lie, but not quite truth either. Ellie, he repeated. I'm Jesse Hart. I know. He turned. She was looking at him now, really looking, and those dark eyes held something that made his chest tight. You know me. She looked away quickly. You paid for me, in front of 40 witnesses. Everybody in 3 counties is going to know your name by morning. Fair point. Jesse went back to cooking, giving her space to breathe. The shack filled with the smell of food, the crackle of the stove, the drum of rain on the tin roof. Normal sounds, human sounds. When the food was ready, he set 2 plates on the table and sat across from her. Ellie stared at her plate like she'd forgotten how eating worked. Go on, Jesse said. You're safe here. For how long? The question hung in the air like smoke. Long as you need, Jesse said. That man Crow, he's not going to just let this go. Probably not. You wasted your money and made an enemy for someone you don't even know. Jesse picked up his fork. Maybe I'm just contrary. Eat. She ate. Not fast, not greedy, but steady, the way someone eats when they've learned food isn't guaranteed. Between bites, her thumb traced the lines of the wooden horse on the table beside her plate. Where'd you get that? Jesse asked, nodding at it. Her hand went still. It was a gift, long time ago. From who? A boy I used to know. Her voice softened. Before everything went wrong. Jesse felt something twist in his chest. He wanted to ask more, wanted to know if she could possibly be, but the fear in her eyes stopped him. You can leave in the morning if you want, he said instead. I won't stop you. But you should know Crow's men will be watching the roads. And if there really is paper on you, there is. She said it flat, matter of fact. I ran from a work camp 6 months ago. They say I stole a ticket, but that's a lie. They say a lot of lies. What's the truth? She looked up at him, then really looked, and Jesse saw something ancient in those young eyes. The truth is, nobody cares what happens to women like me. We're bought and sold and used up, and when we run, they call it theft. Jesse's jaw tightened. That's not right. Right's got nothing to do with it. They finished eating in silence. When the plates were clean, Jesse washed them, while Ellie sat at the table still wrapped in the blanket, still holding that wooden horse. You can have the bed, Jesse said. I'll take the floor. No. Not arguing about this. You need rest. Real rest. She opened her mouth to protest again, then closed it. Exhaustion had carved lines in her face that shouldn't have been there yet. Jesse made up a pallet on the floor with his spare blankets while Ellie moved to the bed. She lay down on top of the covers, still fully dressed, the blanket wrapped tight around her. Jesse blew out the lamp. Darkness filled the shack, broken only by the glow from the stove's cracks. Jesse. Her voice came soft through the dark. Thank you. Don't mention it. A long pause. Then, why'd you do it? Really? Jesse stared at the ceiling, listening to rain on tin. Because somebody should have done it a long time ago. And because... He stopped. Because what? Because that wooden horse means something, even if I don't know what yet. He heard her breath catch. Heard the rustle of blankets as she turned toward the wall. Neither of them said anything more. But Jesse lay awake for hours, staring at the darkness, his mind full of a girl with dark eyes who used to count fence posts 3 at a time and laugh when he got the numbers wrong. A girl who disappeared one summer and took a piece of his childhood with her. A girl named Lila. Outside, the rain poured down, and somewhere in the darkness, Silas Crow was making plans. Because men like him always did. The wooden horse sat on the table, its carved edges catching the faint glow from the stove. 2 horses carved by a 12-year-old boy, one in Jesse's possession for 20 years, one in the hands of a woman named Ellie who held it like a lifeline. Jesse closed his eyes and tried not to hope. But hope, he was learning, was a stubborn thing. It came back even when you thought you'd buried it for good. Morning came cold and gray, the kind that made a man want to stay under his blankets and forget the world existed. Jesse woke to the smell of coffee. He sat up on his pallet, disoriented. The stove was crackling, the kettle steaming, and Ellie stood at the window with her back to him, staring out at the muddy yard like she was memorizing escape routes. "You didn't have to do that," Jesse said, his voice rough with sleep. She didn't turn around. "You fed me, gave me your bed, least I could do." Jesse stood his back, protesting the hard floor. He moved to the table and poured himself a cup. The coffee was strong the way he liked it, which meant she'd been paying attention last night. "How long you been up?" he asked. "Since before light." "Sleep at all?" She finally turned to face him. In the gray morning light, he could see her more clearly than he had the night before. Mid-20s maybe. Dark hair that fell past her shoulders. Cheekbones sharp enough to cut glass. And those eyes, deep brown, guarded, holding secrets that probably weighed more than she did. "Some," she lied. Jesse let it pass. He moved to the stove and started pulling out ingredients for breakfast. Eggs from his 3 hens, bread from town butter wrapped in cheesecloth. "You should eat and then go," Ellie said suddenly, "before Crow sends people." "Where would you go?" "I don't know. West maybe. California." "On foot with no money and wanted posters spreading faster than you can walk." Her jaw tightened. "I've managed this long." "Have you?" Jesse cracked eggs into the skillet. "Because from where I'm standing, managing looked like standing on an auction block in the rain." The words came out harsher than he meant. Ellie flinched, and Jesse cursed himself. "I'm sorry," he said quickly. "That wasn't fair." It was true. Truth can still hurt. She sat down at the table, still wrapped in that blanket, despite the warmth from the stove. The wooden horse sat in front of her, and her fingers kept returning to it, tracing the carved mane, the chipped tail. Jesse cooked in silence, letting the sounds fill the space, the sizzle of eggs, the pop of butter, the whistle of steam. When the food was ready, he divided it onto 2 plates and sat across from her. They ate without talking, but it was a different kind of silence than last night. Less afraid, more careful. "You really carved that?" Ellie asked, finally nodding at the horse. "Long time ago. I was 12, maybe 13. Made 2 of them." "For who?" Jesse hesitated. "A girl. We were friends when we were kids. She moved away." "You remember her name?" "Lila." The name felt strange in his mouth after so many years. "Lila Dawson." Ellie went very still. Her fork stopped halfway to her mouth. "You knew her?" Jesse asked, something sharp and hopeful rising in his chest. "No." She set the fork down. "Common name, that's all. Just reminded me of someone." Jesse watched her face, but she'd gone somewhere behind those eyes where he couldn't follow. They finished breakfast and Jesse washed the dishes while Ellie sat at the table. He could feel her watching him, weighing something in her mind. I need to fix the roof, Jesse said, drying the last plate. Section over the bed's been leaking since last month. You can help if you want, or you can rest. Your choice. I'll help. They spent the morning on the roof, Jesse doing the heavy work while Ellie held nails and handed him tools. She moved careful and quiet like someone who'd learned to anticipate what people needed before they asked. You hum when you work, Jesse said at one point. Ellie stopped mid-reach. What? That tune. You've hummed it 3 times now. She looked confused like she hadn't realized she was doing it. It's nothing, just something I learned as a kid. But Jesse knew that tune, knew it bone deep. It was a lullaby the schoolteacher used to sing when the children got restless on hot afternoons. Mrs. Pike, her name was fierce old woman who believed education could save anyone, including a skinny ranch boy named Jesse Hart and a dark-eyed girl named Lila Dawson. Jesse's hands slowed on the hammer. Mrs. Pike teach you that? Ellie's face went pale. I don't know what you mean. The schoolhouse in Dusty Ford, 20 years ago. Mrs. Pike used to sing that when I need water. Ellie dropped the nails and climbed down the ladder so fast she nearly fell. Jesse watched her go, his mind racing. The wooden horse, the lullaby, the way she counted fence posts this morning when she thought he wasn't looking 3 at a time, just like they used to do as kids, making a game of it. Lila. It had to be. But why was she hiding it? Jesse climbed down and found her at the water pump, drinking from cupped hands, like she was trying to wash something away. Ellie? Don't. She straightened up, water dripping from her chin. Whatever you're thinking, just don't. I'm thinking you're not telling me the truth. I never lied to you. Not telling the whole truth is the same thing. She turned on him, then eyes blazing. You want the truth, fine. The truth is, I've spent 6 months running from men who think they own me. The truth is, I've got nothing. No money, no family, no future except what I can steal or beg or survive. The truth is, I'm dangerous to know, and you've already done too much, and I should have left before you woke up this morning. But you didn't. No, she said quietly. I didn't. Why not? She looked at the wooden horse in her hand. She'd brought it outside with her. Jesse realized. Carried it like a talisman. Because I'm tired, she whispered. I'm so tired of running. Jesse took a step closer. Then stop. I can't. Why not? Because they'll come for me. And when they do, anyone standing next to me goes down too. I won't do that to you. What if I'm willing to risk it? Why would you? You don't even know me. Jesse looked at her, really looked, and saw past the fear and the walls and the name that wasn't quite right. Saw a girl who used to laugh at his bad jokes and help him with arithmetic and challenge him to counting games that made the fence work go faster. Maybe I know you better than you think, he said softly. Ellie's breath caught. For a moment, Jesse thought she might tell him. Might drop the pretense and admit who she really was. But then her face closed off. You don't. You're just a good man who made a stupid choice, and I'm trying to keep you from paying for it. She walked back to the shack, leaving Jesse standing by the pump with 100 questions and no answers. They worked the rest of the day in tense silence. Fixed the roof, mended a section of fence, fed the horses. Normal work. Honest work. But underneath it all ran a current of unspoken things. As evening fell, Jesse made dinner while Ellie sat at the table teaching herself to tie proper knots from a length of rope. Her hands moved quick and clever muscle memory from years of work Jesse didn't want to imagine. Where'd you learn that? He asked, setting a plate in front of her. The outfit I worked for. We traveled, set up tents, hauled equipment. You learned fast or you didn't eat. What kind of outfit? She was quiet for a long moment. Started as a medicine show. Then it got complicated. The owner liked to borrow against future earnings. When he couldn't pay, he borrowed against people instead. Jesse's jaw tightened. And that's when Crow got involved. Crow's involved in everything. He's got pieces of half the territory, debt papers, land claims, guardianship transfers. All legal, all binding, all crooked as a dog's hind leg. The paper he had on you was real. That's the worst part. It wasn't forged. It was exactly what the law allows when a man defaults and you're listed as his dependent. But you're not his dependent. You're a grown woman. Ellie laughed, bitter as burnt coffee. The law doesn't care. The paper says I owe. The paper says he transferred that debt to Crow for settlement. The paper says I'm property until the debt is clear. But I paid it. You paid Crow. But there's other claims. Other men who'll say I stole from them, ran from them, owe them. There's always another claim. Jesse sat down across from her. Then we fight them. Every single one. With what? You're barely making it yourself. This place? She gestured around the small shack. It's honest and it's clean, but it's not prosperity. You can't afford lawyers. You can't afford to fight Crow. I can afford to do what's right. Right doesn't pay bills, Jesse. It was the first time she'd used his name without him prompting her. Something about the way she said it made his chest hurt. They ate, and after dinner, Jesse pulled out his keepsake tin from under the bed. Ellie watched him warily as he set it on the table and opened it. Inside, a few letters from his mother before she died. His father's pocket watch broken. A piece of ribbon from the county fair when he was 14. And a small wooden horse twin to the one Ellie carried. Jesse set it on the table between them. Ellie stared at it like it was a snake. I made two, Jesse said quietly. Gave one away, kept one. Figured someday I'd find her again, show her I remembered. Stupid kid logic. Ellie's hand trembled as she set her own wooden horse next to his. Two shapes carved by the same inexperienced hands. The same chipped tails. The same tiny initials on the belly, J.H. Jesse. Her voice cracked. You don't have to tell me, Jesse said, even though it was killing him not to ask. But I need you to know whatever your real name is, whatever you're running from, it doesn't change what happened last night. It doesn't change what I'm willing to do. You don't understand what you're offering. Then help me understand. She looked up at him, tears gathering in the corners of those dark eyes. What if I told you that girl you knew, Lila? What if she's not who you remember? What if she's done things, survived things that broke her into someone you wouldn't recognize? I'd say people don't break. They adapt. They survive. And they're still worth saving. A tear slipped down her cheek. She brushed it away angrily. I can't drag you into this, she whispered. Your family used to owe Crow money, didn't they? Jesse went still. How did you? I saw the papers. When I was working the medicine show, we stopped in Dusty Ford. I saw Crow's files when I cleaned his office. Your father's name was there. Debts from the drought years. It took you 5 years to clear them. Jesse's throat tightened. That was a long time ago. Was it? Or is Crow just waiting for an excuse to pull you back in? The second he finds out you're helping me, he'll use it. He'll bury you in paper until you lose everything, this land, this shack, everything you've worked for. I've already lost everything that matters once. I'm not afraid of Crow. You should be. Before Jesse could respond, they heard horses. Ellie shot to her feet, her whole body going rigid. Jesse moved to the window and peered out through the gap in the curtain. 3 riders moving slow up the path. Even in the gathering dark, Jesse recognized one of them, Marcus Webb, Crow's head enforcer. The other 2 were ranch hands, the kind of men who asked no questions and forgot what they saw. Stay here, Jesse said. No, stay here. He grabbed his rifle from over the door and stepped outside. The riders stopped 20 feet from the shack. Webb smiled, showing too many teeth. Evening, Hart. Webb. Mr. Crow sent us with a message and an offer. Not interested. You ain't even heard it yet. Don't need to. You can tell Crow the transaction's done. The woman's free. Webb's smile widened. See, that's where it gets complicated. Turns out there was some irregularities in the paperwork. Mr. Crow's willing to return your money minus a reasonable processing fee if you just hand over the merchandise. She's not merchandise. The law says otherwise. The law said slavery was fine once, didn't make it right. Webb's smile faded. You're making a mistake, Hart. Probably, but it's my mistake to make. One of the other riders spoke up, young kid barely 20. Come on, Webb, let's just go. The boss said not to make trouble. Shut up, Tommy. Webb never took his eyes off Jesse. Mr. Crow's a patient man, Hart, but his patience has limits. You think about that offer. We'll be back tomorrow for your answer. Answer's no. Tomorrow, Webb repeated. And Hart. That woman you're protecting. There's paper on her from 3 counties. Theft, fraud, breach of contract. You're harboring a criminal. Sheriff might be persuaded to overlook it now, but that generosity won't last forever. The riders turned and left, taking their time making sure Jesse understood this wasn't over. Jesse stood in the cold until the sound of hoofbeats faded. When he turned back to the shack, Ellie was standing in the doorway, her face pale as milk. I told you, she said. I told you they'd come. They came. I sent them away. For now. But Webb wasn't lying. They'll be back. And next time they might bring the sheriff. Might bring papers. Might bring guns. Jesse set the rifle down. Then we'll deal with it. How do you deal with men like Crow? He owns half the county. He doesn't own me. Ellie laughed, but there was no humor in it. He will. That's what men like him do. They find your weakness and they squeeze until you break. What if I don't have a weakness? Everyone has a weakness, Jesse. Everyone. She went back inside and Jesse followed. The 2 wooden horses still sat on the table side by side, carved by a boy who thought the world was simpler than it turned out to be. Jesse picked up his horse and turned it over in his hands. The initials were worn now barely visible. 20 years of carrying it in his pocket. 20 years of remembering a girl who probably didn't remember him. Except she did remember. He knew it in his bones. Ellie. She didn't turn around. I don't know what happened to you these past years. Don't know what you've survived or what you've had to do. But I know you're still that girl who helped me with arithmetic when I couldn't make the numbers work. Still the girl who made up counting games to make fence work less boring. Still the girl who laughed at my terrible attempts at whittling until I finally got it right. She gripped the edge of the table, her knuckles white. I know you're Lila, Jesse said quietly. I've known since this morning, maybe since last night. And I need you to know it doesn't change anything. You're still worth saving. For a long moment, Lila didn't move. Then her shoulders started shaking. She turned and her face was wet with tears. You can't know that, she whispered. You can't know what I'm worth. You don't know what I've done. Tell me. I can't. Why not? Because I'm ashamed. The words burst out of her like a dam breaking. Because that girl you remember? She's gone, Jesse. She died somewhere between Dusty Ford and the auction block. I'm what's left, and what's left isn't worth your last $75. Jesse crossed the room in 3 strides. He didn't touch her, knew better than to crowd someone who'd been caged, but he stood close enough that she couldn't look away. You're wrong, he said. That girl isn't gone. She's standing right here, still fighting, still surviving. That takes strength most people will never have. That takes courage. It's not courage. It's desperation. Sometimes they're the same thing. Lila sank into a chair, exhausted. Jesse gave her space, moving to the stove to make coffee because he didn't know what else to do. My father died when I was 16, Lila said finally, her voice hollow. Fever. We didn't have money for a doctor. After he was gone, I tried to keep the place running, but I was a woman alone, and the bank wouldn't extend credit. I lost everything in 6 months. Jesse poured coffee, listening. I took work where I could find it. Worked in a hotel kitchen. Mended clothes, cleaned houses. But it was never enough. Never steady. Then this man came through town with his medicine show. Dr. Pemberton, he called himself. Said he needed someone to help with the wagon to sell bottles to keep the books. The pay was decent, and it was regular, so I said yes. She wrapped her hands around the coffee cup Jesse set in front of her. It was good at first. We traveled, saw new places. I learned to handle the horses, learned to work a crowd. But Pemberton, he liked to gamble, liked to drink. Started borrowing money in every town we passed. Started putting my name on papers as collateral because a woman's signature was easier to get credit against. Jesse's jaw tightened, but he didn't interrupt. By the time I realized what he'd done, we were buried. Debt in 6 towns, contracts I'd signed without reading, obligations I couldn't meet. Then one night Pemberton disappeared. Just gone. Left me with the wagon and all his debt. And Crow stepped in. Crow always steps in. He bought up all the paper, consolidated it. Told me I could work off the debt, or he could sell the obligation to someone less understanding. I tried to work it off, but the numbers never got smaller, just kept growing. Interest fees, penalties for late payments I couldn't make. So you ran. So I ran. Stole a ticket, hopped a freight, disappeared. Worked under false names, slept in places that made this shack look like a palace. But Crow's got a long reach. He found me in Silver Creek, dragged me back. Said the debt had grown. Said I owed more than I could ever work off. She looked up at Jesse, her eyes red and tired. That auction wasn't the first. It was the third. First 2 times I was bought by men who, let's just say, working off debt meant more than cooking and cleaning. I'd run again as soon as I could. But each time I ran, the debt grew. Each time Crow caught me, he took more. Jesse's hands clenched into fists. I'll kill him. You'll hang if you do, and it won't change anything. There's always another Crow. Always another man with papers and lawyers and the law on his side. Not always. Lila laughed bitterly. You're a dreamer, Jesse Hart. You always were. And you were always a fighter. So fight. I'm tired of fighting. Then rest. Here. Let me stand watch for a while. She looked at him like he'd spoken a foreign language. Why are you doing this? Jesse sat down across from her. You asked me that last night. I didn't have a good answer then, but I do now. Tell me. Because 20 years ago, a girl showed me kindness when I needed it most. My mother had just died. My father was drowning in work and grief. I was angry at the world and everyone in it. But there was this girl who sat next to me in school and didn't mind that I was mean and sullen and couldn't do fractions to save my life. Lila's breath caught. She helped me with homework, made up games to help me remember numbers, shared her lunch when I forgot mine, never asked for anything in return. Just saw someone who needed help and gave it. That was a long time ago, Jesse. We were children. Doesn't make it matter less. Jesse reached across the table and set his wooden horse next to hers. I carved these because I wanted to give you something that lasted, something that said you mattered. You made a difference. And I won't forget you. Tears rolled down Lila's face, now unchecked. I tried to find you after you left, Jesse continued. Asked around, wrote letters, but you'd disappeared. Years passed. I figured you'd made a good life somewhere. Figured you'd forgotten about the weird ranch kid who couldn't do his times tables. I never forgot. I know, because you kept the horse. Lila picked up her wooden horse, worn smooth from years of carrying. I've lost everything, Jesse. Everything except this. There were times I should have sold it, should have burned it for warmth, should have thrown it away because it hurt too much to remember. But I couldn't. It was all I had left of being someone worth remembering. You are worth remembering. You're worth more than Crow's papers, more than his debt, more than whatever hell you've survived. You can't know that. I can, because that girl who helped me with fractions, She's sitting right here, still helping, still fighting, still surviving against odds that would have broken most people 10 times over. They sat in silence, the coffee growing cold, the two wooden horses between them, like a bridge across 20 years. "I shouldn't stay," Lila said finally. "Every day I'm here, I put you in danger." "Then we'll face it together. You don't understand what you're offering." "Maybe not, but I'm offering it anyway." Lila stood abruptly. "I need air." She walked outside and Jesse let her go. Some things a person had to work through alone. He cleaned up the dinner dishes, banked the fire, checked the rifle. Normal evening tasks. But his mind was far away, remembering a girl with dark braids who used to count fence posts and laugh at his terrible carvings. When Lila came back inside, her face was composed. Calm. Decided. "If I stay," she said, "even for a few days, I need you to promise me something." "What?" "If Crow comes with the law, if he's got real paper that stands up in court, if it comes down to him or you let me go. You don't fight. You don't argue. You let me walk away." "No." "Jesse." "No." He stood to face her. "I didn't pull you off that auction block just to hand you back when things get hard. We figure this out together or we don't figure it out at all." "You're impossible." "I'm stubborn. There's a difference." For the first time since he'd met her again, Lila smiled. Small, hesitant, but real. "You always were stubborn. Even as a kid. Mrs. Pike used to say you'd argue with a fence post if you thought it was wrong. Mrs. Pike said a lot of things. She liked you, though. Said you had integrity, even when you didn't have sense. High praise." They stood there, two people who used to know each other and were learning how to know each other again. 20 years collapsed into this moment, childhood memories and adult scars. Wooden horses and auction blocks, everything that had been and everything that might be. "I don't know how this ends, Jesse," Lila said quietly. "Neither do I, but we don't have to know the ending to start the story." She nodded slowly. "Okay, I'll stay. For now. But the second it gets too dangerous, we'll face that when it comes." They went to bed with the same arrangement as before, Lila in the bed, Jesse on the floor. But this time felt different. Less like strangers sheltering from a storm. More like two people who'd found each other across an impossible distance. Just before sleep took him, Jesse heard Lila's voice, soft as moth wings. "Thank you, Jesse, for remembering. Always," he whispered back. Outside, the night was clear and cold. Stars scattered across the sky like promises. And somewhere in Dusty Ford, Silas Crow was making plans. But for tonight, in this small shack with its leaking roof and honest poverty, two wooden horses sat side by side on a rough table, reunited after 20 years, still chipped, still worn, still whole. 3 days passed like holding your breath underwater. Jesse and Lila fell into a rhythm that felt almost normal, splitting firewood, mending tack him, teaching her to handle his calmer mare while she taught him better ways to darn socks. Small domestic tasks that built trust the way rain builds rivers, one drop at a time. But normal was a lie they both knew wouldn't last. On the 4th morning, Jesse rode into town for supplies. Lila wanted to come, but he refused. Too many eyes, too many questions. She watched him go from the window, her face tight with worry. Jesse felt it too. The whole ride in his gut churned with the certainty that something was coming. Dusty Ford looked the same as always. Muddy streets, false front buildings, the railway platform where freight trains screamed past twice daily. But the people looked different. Watched him different. Conversations stopped when he passed. Women pulled their children closer. At the general store, Martha Henderson counted out his flour and beans without meeting his eyes. "Martha?" Jesse said quietly. "What's going on?" She glanced toward the door, then leaned in. "There's talk, Jesse. Bad talk. About that woman you took." "Her name's Ellie." "Her name's Trouble." Martha's voice dropped to a whisper. Crow's been showing around a wanted poster. Says she's a thief. Says anyone harboring her is breaking the law. Jesse's jaw tightened. What's the poster say exactly? Stagecoach robbery outside Silver Creek. $300 stolen. They got a sketch that looks enough like her to make people nervous. It's a lie. Maybe. But Crow's got witnesses willing to swear otherwise, and he's got the sheriff's ear. Martha wrapped his purchases in brown paper, her hands shaking slightly. You're a good man, Jesse Hart, but you're walking into something you can't win. I have to try. Then be careful. Crow's not playing games anymore. Jesse paid and left his mind racing. A wanted poster changed everything. It gave Crow legal cover, gave him the law on his side. He was loading his saddlebags when he heard boots behind him. Hart. Jesse turned. Sheriff Porter stood 10 feet away, arms crossed, star gleaming on his vest. Sheriff. Need to have a word. I'm listening. Porter looked uncomfortable, like a man forced to do something against his better judgment. There's been a complaint filed. Formal charges against a woman matching the description of your guest. Based on what evidence? Witness statements. A missing strongbox. Circumstantial, sure, but enough for me to ask questions. So ask them. I need to talk to her, Jesse. Bring her in, let her tell her side. If she's innocent, we'll clear it up. Jesse's laugh was sharp as broken glass. Clear it up. You mean hand her over to Crow so he can finish what he started at that auction? I mean follow the law. The law that let Crow sell a human being like livestock, that law? Porter's face reddened. You know I didn't like that business, but it was legal. The papers were in order. Were they? Or did you just not look too close because it was easier? Watch yourself, Hart. Or what, you'll arrest me for having a conscience. They stood there, two men who'd known each other for years, suddenly on opposite sides of a line. Neither wanted drawn. I'm giving you a courtesy warning, Porter said finally, because you're a decent man, and you've never caused trouble before. But if charges are filed and I get a warrant, I'll come for her. And I won't come alone. I understand. Do you? Because Crow's pushing hard on this. He wants her back, and he's got the money to make it happen legal-like. You can't fight that with stubborn pride. Maybe not. But I can try. Porter shook his head. You're going to get hurt, son. Been hurt before. The sheriff walked away, leaving Jesse standing in the muddy street with his supplies and a cold certainty that time was running out. He rode back fast, pushing his horse harder than he should. When he reached the shack, Lila was outside, axe in hand, splitting kindling with fierce, angry strokes. She saw his face and stopped. What happened? Jesse dismounted and told her everything, the poster, the charges, Porter's warning. With each word, Lila's face got tighter, harder. When he finished, she drove the axe into the stump and turned away. I knew this would happen. I told you. We can fight it. How, Jesse? How do you fight a wanted poster? How do you fight witnesses who'll say whatever Crow pays them to say? We go to town, tomorrow. We face this in daylight with people watching. We make Crow prove his case in public. Lila spun to face him. That's insane. The second we ride into Dusty Ford, Porter will arrest me. Maybe. Or maybe if we control the situation, force it out into the open, Crow won't have the cover he needs. You're gambling with my life. I'm gambling with both our lives. Because if we run, we'll spend forever looking over our shoulders. If we hide, Porter will eventually come with a warrant and enough men to make it stick. But if we face it head on, if we make Crow show his cards in front of witnesses, we might have a chance. Lila finished quietly. Or we might just make it easier for him to win. I won't let him win. You can't promise that. No, Jesse admitted. But I can promise I'll fight like hell. Lila studied him for a long moment. Then she picked up the axe and handed it to him. Teach me to throw this. If we're walking into a fight, I want to know how to defend myself. They spent the afternoon in the yard, Jesse showing her how to balance the axe, how to judge distance, how to let the weapon do the work. Lila was a quick study, Her hands remembered the rhythm of hard work, the economy of motion. "You're good at this," Jesse said after she sunk the blade into the target 3 times straight. "I'm good at surviving. That's different than being good at living." "What's the difference?" She pulled the axe free and turned to him. "Surviving is what you do when you've got no choice. Living is what you do when you've got hope. Which one are you doing now?" Lila looked at the axe in her hands, then at Jesse, then at the shack, small and poor and honest. "I'm not sure yet." They went inside as the sun began to set. Jesse made dinner while Lila sat at the table, fingers tracing the 2 wooden horses that had become a permanent fixture there. "Tell me about after I left," Lila said suddenly. "After my mother died and we moved away. What happened to you?" Jesse stirred the stew, choosing his words carefully. "My mother died the next year, fever like your father. After that, it was just me and Pa trying to keep the ranch going. But the drought hit hard in '61, and the war started, and everything fell apart. Did you fight? 3 years. Came back with scars and a rifle I couldn't sell. Pa was gone by then. Hart gave out. He'd borrowed heavy from Crow to keep things afloat. I spent the next 5 years paying that debt." "That's why you understood," Lila said. "About the debt, about Crow." "I understood." Jesse brought 2 bowls to the table. "But I got out. Took everything I had, every penny I could scrape together, but I got out. Bought this line shack with what was left, started over. And then you threw it all away on me." "I didn't throw anything away. I made a choice." They ate in silence, but it was comfortable now. The kind of silence people share when they've said the important things and don't need to fill every gap with noise. After dinner, Lila washed dishes while Jesse checked his weapons, rifle, pistol, knife, making sure everything was clean, loaded, ready. "You think it'll come to shooting?" Lila asked, drying a plate. "I hope not, but I won't be caught unprepared. I don't want you to kill anyone for me. I don't want to kill anyone, period, but I won't let them take you without a fight." Lila set down the plate and crossed to him. She put her hand on his arm, the first time she'd touched him since he bought her freedom. "Jesse, if it goes bad tomorrow, if Crow wins and the law sides with him, I need you to let me go. Don't throw your life away trying to save mine." "Can't promise that." "Please." He looked down at her hand on his arm, small and scarred and strong. "Why does it matter so much to you, what I do?" "Because you're the only good thing that's happened to me in 10 years. Because you saw me on that auction block and you didn't see merchandise. You saw a person. Because when I held that wooden horse, you didn't ask questions or make demands. You just cared." Her voice cracked. "I won't be responsible for destroying that. I won't let Crow take you down because of me." Jesse covered her hand with his. "You're not responsible for what men like Crow do. You're only responsible for what you do. And right now you're choosing to stand up. That takes more courage than running ever did. Or more stupidity. Sometimes they're the same thing." Lila smiled despite herself. "You said that before." "It's still true." They stood there, hands touching, and for a moment, Jesse let himself imagine what life could be like if they survived tomorrow. If they could build something real from these broken pieces. If 2 wooden horses could somehow point the way forward. But that was tomorrow's dream. Tonight, they had to prepare. They went to bed with weapons close and ears tuned to every sound outside. Jesse lay on his pallet, staring at the ceiling, running through scenarios. What he'd say, how he'd position them. Who in town might stand with them against Crow. The list was short. "Jesse." Lila's voice came soft through the darkness. "Yeah. Thank you. For everything. If tomorrow goes wrong, I need you to know you gave me something I'd forgotten I could have." "What's that?" "Dignity." Jesse's throat tightened. "You always had dignity, Lila. Crow just tried to take it. There's a difference." She was quiet for a moment. Then, "You called me Lila." "You want me to stop?" "No, it's just..." I haven't been Lila in a long time. I've been Ellie or Beth or whatever name kept me safe. But Lila, that girl, died a long time ago. That girl is lying in my bed right now, scared but brave enough to face tomorrow anyway. She's not dead. She just got buried under survival. But she's still there. How can you be so sure? Because the girl I knew wouldn't quit. And neither have you. Morning came too fast and too cold. They ate breakfast in tense silence, both checking weapons, both trying not to think about what could go wrong. Jesse saddled both horses while Lila braided her hair tight warrior style. She called it, keeping it out of her face for what came next. "You don't have to do this," Jesse said one more time as they prepared to ride. "Yes, I do. I'm tired of running. Tired of letting men like Crow dictate my life. If I'm going down fighting." That's the Lila I remember. They rode into Dusty Ford mid-morning when the streets were full and witnesses were plenty. Jesse had planned it that way. Whatever happened would happen in daylight in public where shame might still carry weight. The town noticed them immediately. Conversation stopped. People stared. Jesse kept his hand near his pistol, his eyes scanning for threats. They headed straight for the railway platform where the auction had happened 4 days ago. Where this all started. Crow was waiting for them. He stood on the platform with 6 men, Webb the young kid Tommy, and 4 others Jesse didn't recognize, all armed, all watching. Sheriff Porter was there too, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. And behind him, a small crowd had gathered. Word traveled fast in small towns. Jesse and Lila dismounted. Jesse positioned himself slightly in front of her, but Lila stepped forward to stand beside him. Equal. "Well, well," Crow called out. "The prodigal property returns." "I'm not your property," Lila said, her voice clear and strong. "And I never was." "The law says different, girl. I got papers." "Show them." Jesse's voice cut through Crow's bluster. "Show everyone here your papers. Read them out loud. Let's see exactly what kind of legal claim you think you have." Crow's smile faltered for just a second. Then he pulled out his ledger and made a show of opening it. This document witnessed and notarized transfers, guardianship of one Ellie Morrison from her employer, Dr. Thomas Pemberton, to myself, Silas Crow, in settlement of debts, totaling. "What's the date on that transfer?" Lila interrupted. Crow's eyes narrowed. "What?" "The date. When was guardianship supposedly transferred?" "March 15th, 1874. "And when did it expire?" The crowd murmured. Crow's face went red. "Expire. Guardianship doesn't expire until the debt is—" "Yes, it does." Lila's voice rang out across the platform. "Territorial law limits guardianship transfers to 6 months, unless renewed by a judge. March 15th to September 15th. That's 6 months. Today is November 3rd. Your claim expired 6 weeks ago." The murmuring got louder. Jesse felt a surge of fierce pride. She'd been studying, learning, preparing for this moment. Crow sputtered. "There was a renewal." "Show it." "I don't have to show you anything." "Then show the sheriff. Show everyone here. Prove your renewal was legal and properly filed." Porter stepped forward, clearly uncomfortable. "Crow, is there a renewal?" "Of course there is. It's just back at my office." "How convenient," Jesse said. "And these witnesses you claim saw her rob a stagecoach, where are they?" "They're available. They'll testify when the time comes." "So you've got no witnesses here, no renewal papers, no legal claim. What you've got is a 6-week expired guardianship and a grudge because I didn't let you finish your slave auction." The crowd's murmur turned angry now. People who'd watched the auction, who'd looked away from their own shame, were suddenly seeing it in daylight. Crow's face went purple with rage. "You don't know what you're talking about, Hart. That woman is a thief and a liar, and I'll see her hang before I let her walk away from what she owes." "I don't owe you anything," Lila shouted. "Your papers are expired, your witnesses are paid liars, and everyone here knows it. You prey on desperate people, trap them in debt they can never escape, and use the law as a weapon. But I'm done being your victim." An elderly voice cut through the tension. Lila Dawson." Everyone turned. Mrs. Pike pushed through the crowd, ancient, fierce, leaning on a cane but standing straight as a fence post, her eyes still sharp as tacks fixed on Lila. "Mrs. Pike?" Lila's voice wavered. "I'd know that voice anywhere. And that face, you're the image of your mother, child." Mrs. Pike looked at Jesse. "And Jesse Hart, I should have known you'd be in the middle of this." "Ma'am?" Jesse said, touching his hat. Mrs. Pike turned to address the crowd. "This girl was my student 20 years ago. Lila Dawson, smartest child I ever taught. When her mother died, she moved away with her father. I lost track after that, but I never forgot her." "That's all very touching," Crow sneered. "But it doesn't change the fact that she's a criminal who ran from your illegal guardianship." Mrs. Pike's voice could still silence a rowdy classroom, and it silenced Crow now. "I may be old, Silas, but I'm not deaf. I hear things. I know how you operate, how you trap people in debt and call it legal. You got no proof of—" "I've got eyes, and a memory, and records." Mrs. Pike pulled a worn ledger from her bag. "School records from 20 years ago, including drawings the children made, including 2 wooden horses carved by young Jesse Hart as a class project. One for himself, one for Lila Dawson." She opened the ledger and held it up. There, faded but clear, was a child's sketch of 2 horses, and beneath it, 2 signatures, Jesse Hart, Lila Dawson. "This woman," Mrs. Pike declared, "is exactly who she says she is, Lila Dawson. Not Ellie Morrison or whatever false name she used to stay alive. And she's no more a criminal than any of us would be if we ran from slavery dressed up as law." The crowd shifted. Jesse could feel the momentum changing, shame and anger turning toward Crow. But Crow wasn't done. His hand dropped to his gun. "None of this matters," he snarled. "She's mine by right of debt, and I'm taking her back, with or without the law." Porter stepped between them. "Now, Crow, that's not how we—" "Get out of my way, Sheriff." Everything happened too fast. Crow drew his pistol. Porter shouted. Jesse pushed Lila sideways and went for his own gun. But Lila was faster. She grabbed a coupling pin from a pile of railway equipment and threw it hard. The heavy iron rang the station bell like a gunshot, and Crow flinched his shot, going wild. Porter's gun spoke once, sharp and final. Crow's pistol flew from his hand, blood spraying from shattered fingers. Crow screamed. His men backed away, hands carefully away from their weapons. Nobody wanted to die for another man's grudge. "Silas Crow," Porter said, his voice heavy with authority he'd avoided using for too long. "I'm arresting you for assault, attempted murder, and fraud. And I'm going to have a real close look at those guardianship papers and every other document in your office." "You can't." "I can. I should have done it weeks ago." Porter looked at Jesse and Lila. "I'm sorry, both of you. I looked away when I should have looked closer." Webb and the others were already melting back into the crowd, wanting no part of what came next. 2 of Porter's deputies moved in to secure Crow, who was clutching his ruined hand and spitting curses that made Mrs. Pike click her tongue in disapproval. The crowd began to disperse, chattering excitedly. They'd come for a spectacle, and got one, just not the one they expected. Jesse turned to Lila. "You okay?" She was shaking, adrenaline crashing through her system. "I think so. Did we won." Jesse wanted to pull her close, but held back, aware of the eyes still on them. "You were incredible." "I was terrified." "Same thing, remember?" Lila laughed, a sound somewhere between joy and hysteria. Then she turned to Mrs. Pike, who stood watching with satisfied eyes. "Thank you," Lila said, "for remembering, for speaking up. Child, I remember every student who ever sat in my classroom. And I particularly remember the ones who had fire in them. Mrs. Pike looked at Jesse. Both of you, always fighting against what was easy in favor of what was right. I don't know about that, ma'am, Jesse said. I do. Now the sheriff is going to want statements, and there'll be paperwork to clear up Crow's forgeries. But after that, she looked between them. After that, you two need to figure out what comes next. She walked away, leaving Jesse and Lila standing on the platform where 4 days ago everything had changed. What does come next? Lila asked quietly. Jesse looked at her, really looked, at the woman who'd survived hell and come out fighting, at the girl who'd once helped him with arithmetic and made him laugh, at the person she was now forged from both past and present. I don't know, he admitted, but I know I want to find out, with you. Jesse, I've got nothing. No money, no home, no... Neither do I. We'll build something. Together, if you want. Lila was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out the wooden horse. She held it up to catch the light. This little thing kept me alive through some dark times. Reminded me I used to be someone who mattered. Someone who was cared for. She looked at Jesse. You gave me that. Twice now. You always mattered, Lila. I'm starting to believe that. She smiled, tentative but real. Okay, let's build something. Let's see what happens when we stop running and start living. Jesse felt something in his chest, a weight he'd carried so long he'd forgotten it was there, finally lift. Around them, Dusty Ford went about its business. Trains whistled, horses stamped. Life continued its messy, complicated march forward. But on that platform, two people who'd lost each other and found each other and fought for each other stood together facing an uncertain future with hope as their only currency. It would have to be enough. The legal cleanup took 3 days. 3 days of statements and depositions and lawyers sorting through Crow's papers like archaeologists digging through ruins. What they found made even the judge turn pale. Forged signatures, backdated. Documents. Guardianship claims on women who'd never signed anything, debt calculations that multiplied like rabbits every time someone tried to pay them off. Crow sat in a cell with his ruined hand, bandaged, silent. Now his empire of paper crumbling around him. Jesse and Lila spent those 3 days at the sheriff's office, then at the courthouse, then at Mrs. Pike's house, where the old teacher fed them soup and made them sleep in real beds because, as she put it, you both look like death warmed over, and I won't have former students collapsing in my parlor. On the 3rd day, Judge Morrison, no relation to the fake name Lila had used, called them into his chambers. He was a thin man with wire spectacles and the kind of tired eyes that came from seeing too much human ugliness. He gestured for them to sit. Miss Dawson, Mr. Hart, I've reviewed all the documents pertaining to your case. He removed his spectacles and cleaned them slowly. I'm voiding every claim Silas Crow had against you, Miss Dawson. The guardianship, the debt transfers, all of it. Furthermore, I'm issuing warrants for 3 of Crow's business partners who appear to have been running similar schemes. Lila's hand found Jesse's under the table, gripping tight. The wanted poster for stagecoach theft, the judge continued, based on testimony from a witness who we discovered was on Crow's payroll. That charge is dropped. Your record is clean. Thank you, Your Honor, Lila whispered. Don't thank me. Thank the fact that Crow got sloppy and Sheriff Porter finally did his job. The judge put his spectacles back on. However, Miss Dawson, I need to ask you directly, where will you go from here? Do you have family means of support? Lila straightened in her chair. I'll find work, Your Honor. I'm not afraid of hard labor. That wasn't what I asked. She's got a place with me, Jesse said. If she wants it. The judge's eyebrows rose. In what capacity? Business partner. We're starting a way station operation. Garden produce for the railway workers, tack repair, maybe boarding for travelers. Split profits equal. And you can afford this. Not yet, but we'll make it work. The judge studied them both for a long moment. Then he opened a drawer and pulled out a document. Mrs. Pike came to see me yesterday. She's quite the force of nature when she wants something. Did you know she taught in this territory for 47 years? No, sir, Jesse said. 47 years. She said in all that time she had 2 students who impressed her most not because they were brilliant, but because they were decent. Fundamentally bone-deep decent. Those were her words. He slid the document across the desk. She's put up a loan, enough to get your business started with reasonable terms and interest. She says you'll pay back when you can. Jesse stared at the paper. Sir, we can't accept. You can and you will. Mrs. Pike's instructions were very clear. She said, and I quote, "Those 2 children have been knocked down enough. Time someone gave them a hand up instead of a boot down." Lila's eyes filled with tears. Why would she do that? Because she believes in you, and because this territory needs more people who'll stand up to men like Crow. The judge stood, signaling the meeting was over. Don't make her regret it. They left the courthouse in a daze, the loan document folded in Jesse's pocket like a promise. I can't believe she did that, Lila said as they walked toward Mrs. Pike's house. She barely knows me anymore. She knows what matters. Same way I did when I saw that wooden horse. They found Mrs. Pike in her garden, deadheading roses despite the November cold. She looked up as they approached. Well, did the judge give you the papers? Mrs. Pike, we don't know how to thank you, Jesse started. Then don't. Just make something good. Make something that lasts. She clipped another spent bloom. And come to dinner on Sundays. I get tired of my own company. Lila stepped forward and hugged the old woman, who stiffened in surprise, then softened and patted Lila's back. There now, child. Tears won't plant gardens or fix saddles. No, ma'am. But they help wash away the bad. Then cry if you need to. But when you're done, get to work. Winter's coming, and you've got a business to build. They rode back to the line shack that afternoon, the loan papers secure, their hearts lighter than they'd been in years. But as the shack came into view, Jesse felt Lila tense behind him in the saddle. What's wrong? Nothing. It's just I've never had a real home before. Not since my father died. I don't know if I remember how. Jesse helped her down. Neither do I. Guess we'll figure it out together. They spent the rest of the day planning. Jesse sketched ideas in the dirt, while Lila did calculations, her head for numbers, as sharp as it had been when she helped him with arithmetic 20 years ago. We'll need to clear the south plot for vegetables, Lila said. Plant in early spring lettuce, radishes, carrots, things that grow fast and sell easy to the railway workers. And I can put up a lean-to for the tack repair. Maybe expand the corral for travelers' horses. We'll need supplies. Seed tools, lumber. Mrs. Pike's loan should cover it, if we're careful. They worked through dinner, through the evening, plans growing more concrete with each passing hour. It felt good to build towards something, instead of just surviving day to day. As night fell, Jesse built up the fire while Lila made coffee. They sat at the table with their plans spread out like maps to a better future. Jesse, Lila said quietly. Earlier when you told the judge I was your business partner, did you mean that? Every word. Not a worker, not someone you're helping, a partner. Equal shares, equal say. That's what partnership means. Lila traced the rim of her coffee cup. I'm not used to equal. I'm used to being owned or beholden or... You're not any of those things. Not anymore. It's going to take time to believe that. We've got time. She looked up at him then, and Jesse saw something shift in her eyes. A wall coming down, a door opening. When I was on that auction block, she said slowly, I'd given up. I thought that was it, the end of everything good. The final proof that I was exactly what men like Crow said I was. Property, merchandise, something to be used and discarded. Lila, let me finish. She took a breath. Then you stepped forward, and you looked at me like I was a person, not like you were saving me, like you were seeing me. Does that make sense? Yes. Nobody had looked at me like that in so long. Like I mattered beyond what I could do or provide or pay, just mattered. A tear slipped down her cheek. You gave me my name back. My real name. The one I'd buried so deep I thought I'd never find it again. Jesse's throat tightened. You never lost it. It was always there. Maybe. But I needed someone to remind me. She set down her cup and reached across the table. I don't have pretty words or grand gestures. But I need you to know you saved my life. Not just at the auction. Every day since. Every time you treated me like I was worth something. Jesse took her hand. You are worth something. You're worth everything. They sat there, hands clasped across the rough wood, two people who'd survived separate hells and somehow found each other on the other side. I'm scared, Lila admitted. Scared I'll wake up and this will all be gone. Scared Crow's friends will come back. Scared I'll fail and drag you down with me. I'm scared too. Scared I won't be enough. Scared I'll let you down. Scared this land won't support us and we'll lose everything. Jessie squeezed her hand. But I'd rather be scared and trying than safe and alone. When did you get so wise? I'm not wise. I'm just tired of being afraid. They talked late into the night, making plans and sharing memories, and slowly, carefully learning to trust that this fragile thing between them might actually survive. The next morning, they rode into town together to buy supplies. This time, people nodded as they passed. Not friendly, yet that would take time, but acknowledgement. Recognition that maybe they'd misjudged what happened on that platform. At the general store, Martha Henderson smiled as she filled their order. Heard you're starting a business, she said, wrapping seed packets. Planning to, Jesse confirmed. Well, you let me know when you've got produce. I'll buy what I can and spread the word to the other businesses. Thank you, Martha. That means a lot. Just glad to see something good come from all that ugliness with Crow. Man cast a long shadow over this town. They loaded supplies onto the wagon Jesse had borrowed from Mrs. Pike. As they prepared to leave, a young woman approached, barely 20, wearing a faded dress and holding a small child. Excuse me, she said hesitantly. Are you Miss Dawson? Lila nodded. I heard what you did. How you stood up to Crow. I just wanted to say... She shifted the child on her hip. I wanted to say thank you. My husband worked for Crow. Got trapped in debt same as you. We've been trying to break free for 2 years. But with Crow arrested and his papers being investigated, they're saying the debts might be forgiven. I hope they are, Lila said gently. Nobody should be trapped like that. If you're really starting a business, if you need help, I'm good with sewing and mending, and I need the work. Lila looked at Jesse, who nodded. Come by in 2 weeks, Lila said. We'll need someone who can do repairs on tack and canvas. Pay won't be much at first. I don't need much, just need honest work with honest people. The woman left, and Jesse and Lila climbed onto the wagon. Looks like we're hiring, Jesse said. Looks like we're giving people hope. That's bigger than hiring. They drove back to the shack, the wagon heavy with supplies and possibility. They spent the next week working from sunup to sundown, clearing land, building the lean-to, sorting and planning, and preparing for spring planting. Mrs. Pike came to visit on the 5th day, bringing food and advice in equal measure. You're working too hard, she declared, watching them dig posts. You'll burn out before winter's even over. We're fine, ma'am, Jesse said, wiping sweat despite the cold. You're stubborn is what you are, both of you. She set down her basket. Now stop that digging and eat something. They sat in the weak November sun eating Mrs. Pike's fried chicken and listening to her talk about the town, about the investigation into Crow's network, about the reading circle she was organizing at the railway platform. A reading circle, Lila asked. Every Thursday evening. For women who want to learn or improve their reading. Free of charge. Mrs. Pike looked at Lila meaningfully. I could use an assistant. Someone who understands what it's like to claw your way up from nothing. I'm not a teacher. Neither was I when I started. But I learned. You will too. Lila glanced at Jesse, who smiled encouragement. "All right," Lila said. "I'll help. But I'm still learning myself." "That's what makes you perfect for it. You remember what it's like to struggle." Mrs. Pike left with a promise to return the following week with books and materials. After she'd gone, Lila stood looking at the half-built lean-to, the cleared garden plot, the small shack that was becoming something more than just shelter. "This is really happening," she said wonderingly. "We're really building something. Did you doubt it? Every single day." She turned to him. "But then I wake up, and you're still here working beside me, and I start to believe maybe I deserve this. Maybe I deserve a second chance." "You deserve 100 chances, and you don't have to earn them." "That's going to take some getting used to." They went back to work, the rhythm of shared labor becoming its own kind of language. Jesse noticed how Lila sang while she worked, now not humming nervously, but actually singing old songs from childhood that he half remembered. One afternoon, while they were repairing fence, Lila started a counting game. "3 posts," she said. Jesse looked over. "What? 3 posts? Like we used to do as kids. Remember? We'd count fence posts 3 at a time to make the work go faster." Jesse's chest went tight with a feeling he couldn't name. "I remember. 6 posts. 9 posts," Jesse continued, falling into the old rhythm. 12 posts. They worked their way around the property, counting by threes, and Jesse felt time collapse, the scared 12-year-old and the broken adult existing in the same moment, both healing through this simple shared task. When they finished, Lila was smiling. Really smiling. Not the careful, guarded expression she usually wore, but something open and genuine. "That helped," she said. "When we were kids, made the hard work feel like a game." It did. "I think I forgot how to play, how to find joy in small things." We'll remember together. As winter deepened, they fell into a routine. Work during the day, planning in the evening. Mrs. Pike's reading circle on Thursday nights, where Lila helped women sound out words and Jesse did repairs on the platform bench. The young woman with the child, her name was Sarah, started coming twice a week to learn sewing repairs and help with canvas work. She was quiet, but skilled, her fingers quick with needle and thread. "My mama taught me before she died," Sarah explained one evening. "Said a woman who could sew would never starve." "Your mama was right," Lila said, inspecting a neat line of stitches. "This is beautiful work, Sarah." "Thank you, Miss Dawson." "Just Lila. We're partners here, not boss and worker." Sarah's eyes went wide. "Partners. If you want, small share of profits in exchange for your work. Same as I have with Jesse." Sarah looked like she might cry. "Nobody's ever offered me partnership before." "Then it's about time someone did." Word spread. Other women started coming around asking about work, about the reading circle, about whether the stories they'd heard were true. That Lila Dawson had faced down Silas Crow and won. That she and Jesse Hart were building something where women could work as equals. Not everyone approved. Old Man Henderson complained to the sheriff that Hart's running some kind of women's collective. The sheriff, to his credit, told Henderson to mind his own business. But mostly the town watched and waited to see if this experiment in dignity would survive winter. One cold December night, Jesse woke to find Lila's side of the bed empty. They'd stopped pretending weeks ago, stopped with Jesse on the floor and Lila in the bed. It was warmer sharing and more honest. Nothing improper, just 2 people who'd learned that loneliness was worse than propriety. He found her outside, wrapped in a blanket, staring at stars. "Can't sleep?" he asked, joining her. "Too much thinking." "About what?" "About how different my life is now. 3 months ago I was running from Crow's men, sleeping in haystacks, stealing food when I could. And now—" She gestured at the shack, the half-built lean-to, the cleared garden plot waiting for spring. "Now I have this. Have you. Have hope. It doesn't feel real. It's real. What if I mess it up? What if I'm not strong enough to keep it? Jesse was quiet for a moment. You know what I think? I think strength isn't about never falling. It's about getting back up every time you do. And you've gotten back up more times than anyone I know. I had to. Nobody was going to pick me up. I would have. If I'd known where you were, I would have come. Lila turned to look at him. Would you really? Or is that just something kind you tell yourself? I would have. Jesse met her eyes. That day you left after your mother died, I waited at the schoolhouse for a week thinking maybe you'd come back. Mrs. Pike finally told me you'd moved away for good. I was 12 years old, and I cried like a baby because my best friend was gone, and I never got to say goodbye. Jesse, I've spent 20 years carrying that wooden horse and wondering what happened to you, wondering if you were happy if you remembered me, if I'd ever see you again. So yes, I would have come. I would have burned down every building Crow owned to find you. Lila's eyes filled with tears. I thought about you too. All those years. When things got really bad, I'd take out that wooden horse and remember there was a time when someone cared about me without wanting anything in return. It kept me alive in ways you can't imagine. Then we kept each other alive, even apart. She moved closer, and Jesse put his arm around her shoulders. They stood there under the winter stars, two people who'd found their way back to each other across impossible distance. I'm not good at this, Lila said quietly. At letting people in, at trusting things will work out. Neither am I. But you're trying. So are you. That's all we can do. They went back inside where it was warm. As they settled back into bed, Lila spoke into the darkness. Jesse, when spring comes and we start the business, what happens to us? What do you mean? I mean, are we partners? Friends? Something else? Jesse's heart hammered. What do you want us to be? I don't know. I've never had the freedom to want before. I've only had survival. Then we'll figure it out as we go. No pressure, no expectations. Just see where it leads. And if it leads nowhere, then we'll still have built something good, still have given each other a chance. Lila was quiet for a long time. Then, I think I could love you, if I remember how. Jesse's breath caught. I think I already do. Have for 20 years in one way or another. That's terrifying. Yes, it is. But maybe worth it. Definitely worth it. They fell asleep holding hands across the small space between them, not quite ready for more, but not willing to let go either. Winter settled in hard after that. Snow came and stayed, making outdoor work impossible. Jesse and Lila spent the long, dark months inside, making plans, doing small repairs, learning each other's rhythms. They argued sometimes about money, about priorities, about whether to expand the garden or the stable first. But they learned to argue fair, to listen to compromise, to treat each other as equals even when emotions ran hot. Sarah came when she could, bringing her little boy, who played with wooden blocks Jesse carved. Mrs. Pike visited weekly with food and books and sharp-eyed observations about their progress. And slowly, carefully, Jesse and Lila built something neither of them had names for yet. Something more than friendship, but not quite romance. Something rooted in shared history and mutual respect and the bone-deep knowledge that they'd both survive anything as long as they survived it together. On Christmas Eve, Mrs. Pike invited them for dinner. She'd also invited Sarah and her son and 2 other women from the reading circle. They ate too much and sang carols, and Jesse watched Lila laugh at something Sarah said, her whole face transformed by joy. This was what freedom looked like, he realized. Not grand gestures or dramatic rescues, just this people gathering in warmth, building connections, choosing kindness over cruelty. On the ride home, Lila leaned against Jesse's shoulder in the wagon. Thank you, she said. For what? For reminding me what normal feels like, what good feels like. You did that yourself. I just showed up. You showed up when it mattered most. That's everything. The shack was cold when they got home, but they built up the fire and made coffee, and sat at their table with the 2 wooden horses between them. Next Christmas, Lila said, we'll have our own dinner. Invite people here. That means we have to survive until next Christmas. We will. I'm starting to believe that now. Jesse picked up his wooden horse worn smooth from decades of carrying. I'm glad I never threw this away. Glad I held on to hope even when it seemed stupid. It wasn't stupid. It was faith. That's different. Is it? Hope is wanting something to happen. Faith is believing it will even when you can't see how. Lila picked up her matching horse. I lost my faith somewhere along the way, but I'm finding it again. Here, with you. They sat in the firelight holding their wooden horses, 2 people who'd been lost and found, and were learning slowly to be whole again. Outside, snow fell soft and steady, covering the world in clean white silence. Inside, the fire crackled and the coffee steamed, and 2 hearts learned to beat in rhythm again after 20 years of separation. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. There would still be hard days ahead, lean times, moments of doubt and fear. But it was a beginning. And sometimes that was enough. Spring came late that year, fighting winter for every inch of ground. Jesse and Lila were out before dawn on the first day, warm enough to work soil-breaking earth that had been frozen for months. The work was back-breaking, the kind that left you too tired to think, and that was exactly what they needed. This section for carrots, Lila said, marking off a plot with stakes and string. Radishes here, lettuce along the edge where it gets shade. You've been studying that seed catalog like it's scripture, Jesse observed, driving his spade deep. Because it is scripture. This garden is going to feed us and pay our debts. Can't afford to get it wrong. They worked in comfortable silence, the kind that came from months of living in close quarters. Jesse had learned Lila hummed when she was content, went quiet when she was worried, and sang outright when she was happy. This morning she was humming. By midday, they'd prepared half the garden plot. Jesse straightened his back, protesting, and looked at what they'd built over the winter. The lean-to stood solid, tools organized inside. The corral had been expanded. Even the shack looked better, new shingles, repaired walls, windows that actually closed all the way. We did this, he said almost to himself. Lila looked up from her planting guide. What? This? All of it? 6 months ago, I was barely scraping by. You were running for your life. Now look. Lila stood and surveyed their work, dirt on her hands, sweat on her face, and something like pride in her eyes. We're not rich. No. We're not safe from everything that could go wrong. No. But we're here. We're building. We're... She paused, searching for the word. Free, Jesse finished. Free, she repeated, testing the weight of it. I don't think I've ever been free before. Not really. Even as a child, there was always something: my mother's death, my father's grief, the weight of survival. And now I wake up every morning and remember I don't belong to anyone. Not Crow, not debt, not fear. Just myself. She looked at him. And maybe you, if you'll have me. Jesse's heart did something complicated in his chest. They'd been dancing around this for months, sharing a bed, but not addressing what that meant: building a business, but not defining their relationship, existing in a space between friendship and something more. Lila, I know we said no pressure, no expectations, but I need to be honest with you. She wiped her hands on her apron. I love you. Not the way I loved you when we were 12 and everything was simple, but the way a woman loves a man who sees her clearly and doesn't look away, who stands beside her when the world says run, who... Jesse crossed the distance between them and kissed her. It wasn't gentle or practiced. It was messy and real, and tasted like dirt and sweat and hope. When they broke apart, Lila was crying. I was trying to make a speech, she said, half laughing, half sobbing. It was a good speech, good, but I've waited 20 years to do that. Was it worth the wait? Every second. They stood there in the half-plowed garden holding each other, and Jesse felt something settle in his soul. This was what he'd been moving toward his whole life. Not a grand destiny, just this moment with this woman who'd survived hell and come back fighting. So what does this mean? Lila asked against his chest. Whatever we want it to mean. That's not an answer, Jesse Hart. Okay. It means we're together. Partners in business and partners in life. It means when people ask, I get to say you're mine and I'm yours. It means we're building something that lasts, Lila finished. Not just a business, a life. Yes. She pulled back to look at him. I'm still scared. Still worried I'll mess this up. So am I. But I'd rather be scared with you than safe alone. You said that before. It's still true. They went back to work, but everything felt different now. The air lighter. The work easier. The future less uncertain. That evening, they sat on the porch Jesse had built in February, watching the sun set over land that was starting to feel like home. We should get married, Lila said suddenly. Jesse nearly dropped his coffee. What? Married. You know the thing where we stand up in front of people and make it official? I know what married means. I'm just surprised. Why we're building a life together. Makes sense to make it legal. Jesse studied her face looking for doubt or hesitation. Found none. You're serious. Dead serious. I've spent years being defined by men's paper guardianship documents, debt transfers, ownership claims. I want paper that says, I chose this, chose you, chose us. When? Summer. After the first harvest. When we can prove to ourselves and everyone else that we made it. Jesse set down his coffee and took her hand. Lila Dawson, are you proposing to me? I guess I am. Is that all right? It's more than all right. It's perfect. He kissed her knuckles. Yes, I'll marry you. On one condition. What's that? We do it here, on this land, with the people who stood by us. Mrs. Pike will insist on organizing everything. Let her. She's earned it. They sat in the gathering dark making plans, and Jesse thought about the wooden horses sitting on the shelf inside. Two toys carved by a boy who didn't know what the future held. Two promises that took 20 years to keep. The next few months passed in a blur of work. The garden sprouted, then flourished. Sarah came 3 days a week now, bringing her son and her skills. Two more women joined them. Rebecca, who'd escaped a marriage gone bad, and Anna, whose husband had died in a mine collapse, leaving her with 2 daughters and no income. They all worked together, sharing tasks and profits. Jesse built a larger workshop. The women set up a proper sewing area. The way station began to take shape, not grand, but honest. A place where travelers could rest and working people could make a living wage. Word spread. Railway workers stopped by for fresh vegetables. Ranchers brought tack that needed mending. A freight company contracted them to repair canvas covers for their wagons. The reading circle grew too. Mrs. Pike had 12 women now, ranging from teenagers to grandmothers, all learning or improving their literacy. Lila taught basic arithmetic on Tuesday nights, using garden calculations to make the numbers relevant. If 3 bundles of carrots sell for $1, how much do I charge for 7 bundles? She'd ask, and the women would work through it together, helping each other, building confidence with every problem solved. One Thursday evening in June, after the reading circle ended, Mrs. Pike pulled Lila aside. You're a natural teacher, she said. Have you thought about doing this full-time? I can't afford to. The way station needs all hands. What if I told you the Territorial Education Board is looking for assistant teachers, pays not much but it's steady, and you could still help with the way station? Lila stared at her. Mrs. Pike, I barely finished 8th grade before my mother died. You finished what matters, you learned to learn. The rest is just practice. The old woman's eyes gleamed. I've already recommended you. They're sending an inspector next month. You what? Don't look at me like that. You're wasting your potential measuring carrots. Though I suppose marrying Jesse Hart isn't a complete waste. Lila laughed despite her shock. How did you know about that? Child, I know everything that happens in this territory. When's the wedding? August, after harvest. Perfect. Gives me time to organize properly. You'll wear my mother's dress, she was about your size. And we'll use the platform by the railway, same place you faced down Crow. Full circle, as it were. Mrs. Pike. Don't argue, I've already decided. That night, Lila told Jesse about the teaching position. He was splitting wood for the stove and his axe paused mid-swing. That's incredible, Lila. It's terrifying. What if I'm not good enough? You taught me fractions when we were 12. You can teach anyone anything. That was different. Why? Because you believe in yourself less now than you did then. He set down the axe. Take the position. We'll make the way station work around it. But the money will come. Between your teaching pay and the way station profits, we'll be fine. Better than fine. Lila bit her lip. What if I fail? Then you'll try again. Same as we've done with everything else. She nodded slowly. Okay, I'll do it. I'll take the test when the inspector comes. That's my girl. Your girl. She raised an eyebrow. I don't belong to anyone, remember. My partner then. My future wife. My person. Better.